championship up until now has been great.
So we're getting into Bledisloe Cup week, of course, a big one ahead in Melbourne. And our mate Eddie Jones, well, they're not going so well in the Rugby Championship so far, but Eddie Jones has been in fine form off the pitch. This is what he had to say last week after that loss to Argentina.
Whilst it seems like it's doom and gloom at the moment, it's not. You know, beating inside here is a fair bit of optimism that we'll be able to change fairly quickly in the next couple of weeks. If I was the All Blacks, I'd look out.
With a twinkle in the eye and a little smirk in the face. Does he believe a word he's saying?
Eddie, I love you, mate. That's like, I just love you for that. Because for me, Jose Mourinho, who was Chelsea coach, Man U, he's now in Rome, and that's what he used to do. When the team wasn't going like he wanted, he would deflect, and that's a great skill. And, you know, after South Africa, Eddie has a go at the journalist, you know. What are you talking about, mate? You're like, who are you to say I said that was the B-side? And I think that's the beauty of the man, you know. He will deflect pressure off the team, and he's probably pretty genuine. And behind the scenes, he's probably going, you know, we're heading in the right direction.
I think he is. I think he's genuine. You know, it'll give his players confidence seeing that. Yeah, it's not all doom and gloom. We've seen, I mean, we've already seen sort of pictures of the past. There's a lot of history there when it comes to the Bledisloe Cups, and it will take a big effort, though, I must admit. But this game here, Jeff, they had the ability to win that, didn't they?
They were one play away from winning this game. Look, they hadn't been great, but they'd shown some really good signs. And look, it was in the last minute. Had they won this game, it's a completely different conversation. So those are the margins that you start talking about. Look, he also did a number of interviews and he talked about the fact that they've got enough things to worry about, not to worry about what other people are doing. So he's aware of they've got some issues right now. He's got some issues. And I think there's some things he's having to deal with. He's only really starting to get to know his players, starting to understand what he's got. He's bringing players in. But you have to love it. The one thing I will say about Australian rugby players, it doesn't take much for them to get confidence back, to believe in themselves. That's just the nature of them. And when they win one game, and it's a critical game, and remembering how close they were last year, we got some help from a certain referee that got us across the line. It would have been a vastly different competition with Australia. So I think we've got to be very wary.
We didn't have help from the referee. That was like they wasted time on the kick.
But anyway,
what happened?
That's helped, because that's the first time that's happened in the history of the game.
What happened to the Ghetto law?
Well, it's gone.
So Eddie Jones has just gone, I'm just going to do what I want.
I want to talk about that.
Well, let's have a look at you say he's getting to know his players, and he's getting to know them because they're coming from everywhere now. This is the Australian overseas players, or where their players are coming from. Let's have a look at the various locations. So this is the starting 15 against the Pumas last week. Couple from France, 3 from Japan.
Yeah, and I think this is significant, the fact that they've ditched their eligibility rules and said, these are the guys I want, Mills. But I'm thinking the impact of them coming in, playing in a different competition, playing a different style of rugby, and the fact the guys that tasted success against New Zealand sides in Super Rugby, a lot of them aren't there. And they're guys in key positions. 2 locks, plenty of size, and this is the balance of their 23. The Brumbies had 6. Now, they were their best performed Super Rugby team. The Rebels were terrible. They didn't even make the playoffs, but they've got 6 Wallabies, and you start going, oh, they've got individual talent. Well, hold on. Winning's a habit. And for a lot of these guys, I don't think they've tasted it. And now he's trying to work out, one, how they want to play, and I'm not sure they've got that quite right.
Well, they haven't. But I think he's a lot... Well, he is. He's shown that in the past, right? He won't care about... This isn't about winning, you know, the championship. Okay, yeah, perhaps some of it will be about winning the Bledisloe. This has got to do with the bigger picture, and that's down the track. And we know they've got a decent side of it. All he needs to try and create is that confidence. They pick up this one win. On the other side of that, the All Blacks will be wanting to put that Bledisloe away firmly in one game, rather than going into Dunedin and thinking, OK, we've got to win this back, because there's a number of players, which we're going to touch on a bit later on, that hasn't seen any Test match footy this year so far. So clever in all aspects from Eddie Jones, because he's growing that sort of confidence. They're going to get time to gel, especially those players from overseas. It's a different style.
No, this is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it the Jose law instead of the Eddie law. But this is what happened. Hamish McLennan, who's the chairman, said, I want Eddie back. And Eddie would have sat down with him and said, this is what I want. I'm going to pick players from all over the world. You know, these are the rules, these are the reasons I'm coming back, and this is what I need. and I don't care, I'm going to pick the best football team, and they would have gone, okay. So I think that's rubbish what you just said about the Super Rugby form, because Australia have never worried about it. They've always, if you have a look at
Well, they should start worrying about it,
yeah,
because their form actually showed they could compete against the Chiefs, who are a remarkable side. They had systems in place and players who were performing, which he's totally ignored.
Yeah, but what about the Hollanders?
What do you mean?
Well, you don't pick All Blacks on the form of their side ever. So the Rebels, if they got 6, Eddie would have been looking at the players and going, look, they're good enough to be Wallabies. The argument is, should they drop down to 4 franchises? You know, that's the ongoing
Well, they've got
argument.
no one from the Force anyway, so that doesn't matter.
Exactly.
They've only picked
They've
4
gone.
franchises.
But I don't think Eddie would ever look at a game of rugby, the Rebels versus the Force, and go...
So you don't believe in combinations. You don't believe in bringing in people who've played together, who understand each other. So when it's instinctive and when you need to make decisions,
I
you
used
understand.
to,
You've gone
but
away
I
from
don't
that.
anymore.
You don't anymore.
No,
just players from everywhere.
Not if I'm talking from the Australian point of view.
Yeah,
because their talent is scattered so wide now, and ours is, you know, it's a risk we need to think about moving forward.
It's a totally different process and format to what we're used to. And you know, I hope we don't go down that track where we have to bring in overseas players. We don't need to. We've got the luxury of having 5 great franchises. You know, well, Highlanders are a little bit off this year, but they've still got great players in there that still come. So competition is good. Eddie's trying to create that. You know, get guys from overseas. They've got to get back to winning. You know, winning games. You know, and a big one for him will be. Imagine if they win the Rugby World Cup. How successful that's going to be in terms of bringing more numbers in. They've chased after some rugby league players. They have to go a different way, and this is why Eddie's demands when he first came would have been, I want to open it up for overseas players to come back and play for the Wallabies.
But is he running out of time? Is he running out of time to find the identity? You say, oh yeah, imagine they've got 2 games to come against an All Blacks team that's going quite well, to be fair. So has he got time with a World Cup less than 50 days away? Yes, they're on a slightly softer side of the draw, you could say, at the World Cup as well, to find that identity, to figure out what they're trying to do as an entire union.
So in my opinion, he will not. If he wins this week, I don't think he will. I think the All Blacks are in great form. If he does, it'll be an added bonus. But Eddie will not be thinking. He will know the draw. He will know he's actually got a little bit more breathing space than the All Blacks have on the other side of the draw, and that's what we talked. You know, that's what we talked about, that draw. So for me, it's actually he will have it all planned out. If you know Eddie Jones, he'll have every second, every minute, everything worked out, and he'll want to win this week, but he will have it as part of the plan.
Coach, well, it doesn't matter what happens anywhere in between.
He hasn't got the pressure like the All Blacks do to win the Bledisloe Cup. He'll want to win it. If he doesn't, no, he's got plenty of time. He's got time to win the big one, and that's the Rugby World Cup. That's his focus.
I'm not doubting the talent and ability of some of these players, but the fact that I think they're coming from around the world, it's the first time they've gone into this space, and they're having to learn very, very quickly, to your point, how to make it work, how to get connected, because these guys haven't been in their environment together for a while.
Well, there's another team playing in the Bledisloe Cup as well. We should have a look at the All Blacks too. Obviously, they have been very good in the last couple of weeks. And now, 2 games until that squad is picked, the Bledisloe this week and then the return match in Dunedin. So who do we need to see? Who hasn't had game time yet within that All Black squad that we want to see named in a side this weekend? You all started to look at each other like you've all got very different opinions.
I have a voce di corridoio.
A what?
A voce di corridoio, which is whispers in the...
men in the field.
No, whispers in the hallways. So we don't know whether it's really true or not, but I believe that there's a couple of niggly injuries that could keep a couple of players out for 6 weeks. So Sean Stevenson is still with the All Blacks, and we might just see him.
We might just see him? Or do you think
Well, you'd
will
have to see him, wouldn't you? Like,
Do we
you've got a
need to
couple of niggly injuries that you don't know if the person's going to go to the World Cup, Mills. We have to see people. Maybe it's not this week, but when are you going to see them? When's
I
the
think we'll
team being
see
named?
everybody in Dunedin if we win this next weekend.
Yeah.
We'll see everybody, but their focus well and truly, Mills, on the back of these 2 really strong performances will be on Melbourne, and this will be once again, and you talk about it, we want to see our guys. We're counting down the
You're not going to
test
see
matches.
anyone this week.
You don't think we'll see? Do you don't think we might see an Anton Leonard-Brown on the bench?
Nah.
Mills, for you, do you think we'll see anyone that hasn't been part of these first 2 test
The
matches?
bench will be an interesting make-up because, you know, the last time they played South Africa, they didn't have, you know, the big talking point was not having DMAC on the bench, and sort of how would that work? I think you won't see too many of this, you know, against the Wallabies. I think they'll continue on and try and continue that momentum and, you know, the confidence within the team. You know, we spoke about the Wallabies, but this is a totally different environment and what the All Blacks have had to face, considering what's gone on last year. I think you continue that momentum, and hence the reason why Eddie saying what he did is massive, because the All Blacks will want to win this first game to give guys game time that haven't seen it in Dunedin.
Do you need to see Leicester Whainanganuku? Do
We'd
you
like
need to know
see
what
it.
he's
I
going to
think,
do?
well, here's the thing. Braden Ennor wasn't in the squad, the initial squad, and he's come in as cover for injuries. If he's fit and available now and pretty much plays the exact same positions, Mills, JK, as Braden Ennor, surely Leicester Whainganuku's an option off the bench. If you've got any faith in him as a player and trust him to turn the Super Rugby form apparently, which doesn't mean anything, if he's going to bring that to the All Black jersey, you have to see him now. We have to see him play this week in a pressure situation.
Was that a dig?
It was a dig.
It was.
You
but
keep
I said
talking about
Australian Super Rugby.
Well, they should take stock in it as well. Because if you
So my answer on Leicester is no, he will not play this weekend.
So how does he play his way into the World Cup? Is he just going?
Well, you've got to realise the pressure on Ian Foster and the All Blacks to win all tournaments, right? Don't forget that. As a rugby public, we're very demanding.
Yeah. The Bledisloe Cup's not a bonus for the All Blacks.
No,
it's
it is
like
a
it is for the
must.
Wallabies.
It's
It's a must.
Right.
So like Mills rightly said, we've got all the pressure. So you're conservative this week, and we win the Bledisloe Cup, and then you might see him the following week, and then you start picking for the World Cup, Mills, but you can't take any risk.
I would actually like to see him start, to be totally honest. Like, I think if you've got the wingers that we've had Nutaway out there, we've had Telea, Caleb Clark's had a go. I think you wouldn't be losing anything if you said, well, Leicester, your turn now. You're going to go out there and this is your opportunity. We're not sort of going backwards. If anything, this is why you were picked. You get a chance to go out there and perhaps get a start rather than coming off the bench.
The most talked halfback, Cam Rawgard. Do we see him? Do we wait? We've been looking for something different at halfback, and he hasn't had an opportunity to date. He's been in camp with them. This would be, a big moment to put him in a big test match. They've clearly got great faith in Finlay Christie. I think we all want to see him, but to your point, it's about putting that trophy away. But this, to me, is a great opportunity for some of these guys. If you want game changers, do we see Luke Jacobson? Here's another thing for you. Jason Ryan was on the show last week. He talked about the fact there are players who are coming back from injury who will come into the selection discussion. So all of a sudden, Ethan Blackadder, for example, I understand is back out there. Now, here's a guy who can play multiple positions. We haven't even seen Luke Jacobson yet in an All Black jersey.
Who was one of the Super Rugby standouts.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you start going, what are the players that you go, we have to at least get a taste of to know that they have faith in them, or are we just going to stick with the group?
You're confusing me. There's too many people to talk about.
How many places
So let's go back
how
to
many spots
Roygard. And I have a passion for halfback, Mills, just because I like the contrast. I like, TJ Perenara was amazing for us because you had Smith, and then you had a different option with TJ coming on. Roygard gives us that. So I think at some stage we have to see whether he can come on late in the game, be that extra loose forward, be a bit more aggressive.
Does a dead rubber in Dunedin prove anything? If it's a dead rubber, now I'm not writing Australia off. I refuse to do that. Because then, if it's not, right, say Australia win this Test match, Mills, Dunedin changes completely, significantly for the group, right? Because you're going, I'm not taking any risks here. There's a trophy on the line.
But they would have already had the fact, if that happens, okay, if it does happen, touch wood it doesn't, that we go over and win in Melbourne, that, those other guys that have played for the All Blacks A are now going to be either the third sort of halfback coming, because he's not going to get an opportunity, or they just say, look, Roygard goes. I don't see him playing. I'd love to see him playing in Melbourne, but I don't think so. There was that niggly period where Finlay Christie came on, and he weathered that storm pretty well. The ball was messy, but that's experience, right? He's been in there for a while. He's come off the bench. I don't think it's fair to give Roygard an opportunity to go out there and basically have messy ball. You want to give him his cleaner stuff and let him sort of have a clean ride. But at the same time, as well as I say, I probably contradict myself. Can he handle the pressure?
Can I just go back to another point?
Take an unkept halfback.
Can I just go back to another point that you threw in quite casually, actually?
So what you're saying
to me is that guys are going to go to the World Cup and they haven't played for 6 months.
For a long time. They're going to go and you'll be relying on them in the other games at the Rugby World Cup. the Uruguays and Namibia, that's their impact that they can have.
If Cam Roigard gets selected, doesn't play in the next 2 tests, he won't have played since when did the Hurricanes get knocked out of Super Rugby?
No, I'm talking about Blackadder and...
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's-
Fletcher Newell,
another
there
one,
are other guys
yeah.
that haven't been on the big stage.
Unless they get a bit of NPC time, which starts next week.
Quite possibly,
but
yeah.
That's kind of it.